Education numbers are in for Michigan children, and they do not make the grade. Why are students lagging? Is it the COVID effect or something else? We've assembled a roundtable of experts to discuss. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
When you get that one person, the right person, and you're able to take them off the street and hold them accountable, then you will see a tremendous decrease in crime in that area or even across the city.
Detroit police take the interim tag off its new chief. What will Todd Bedison do to improve things in the city's neighborhoods? And what can be done to avoid future tragedies like the one we saw this week in a casino parking garage? It's Sunday, February 16th, 2025, and this is Flashpoint. Good to have you with us, everybody. I'm Jason Colthorpe. New data is out this week on how our kids are doing in math and reading. The scores come from the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Let's start with reading. On average, 24% of Michigan fourth graders read proficiently or better. That's down slightly from 2022. 75% of fourth graders have basic or below basic reading skills. Similarly, 24% of eighth graders are proficient in reading or better. 76% have basic or below basic reading skills. Both are slight shifts in the wrong direction compared to 2022 results. Now, in math, 37% of fourth graders are proficient or above. 63% have basic math skills or below. That's a slight shift in the positive direction. Different story, though, for eighth graders who are just 24% proficient or better in math, and 76% have basic or below basic math skills. As you might have guessed, Michigan is below the national average here and in the bottom half of states with those scores. We're going to dive deeper into those numbers with our roundtable coming up a little later. But first, for several years, the Detroit Police Department has celebrated decreasing numbers in violent crime and increased connections with the community. The attitude of the city's police force is often mirrored by its chief. And this week we learned Todd Bedison will take the reins after 27 years with the department. What changes does he have in mind, and how is he going to navigate a change in the mayor's office? Let's ask him right now on Flashpoint. Let us say good morning and welcome to the all but official new chief of police, Todd Bedison. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. I never take anything for granted, but definitely thank you, Jason, for having me here, Channel 4, so thank you.
That is a formality, I would say, right? They have to vote on Tuesday. Unfortunately, we have to put interim by your name today, but no surprises coming.
I anticipate being the chief of police shortly, and so I've talked to various council members, but like I said, I don't take anything for granted, and I'm very humble and looking forward to serving in the capacity of chief of police.
After the better parts of 4 decades on the force, this has to be a dream come true for you.
It is. I worked for many chiefs. I've had the opportunity to work for basically every chief since I came on the job, starting with Ike McKinnon, then Benny Napoleon, Jerry Oliver, Ella Billy Cummings, James Barron, Warren Evans, Ralph Gobb. I can just name them all.
A few of those.
Yeah.
Do you learn something from every chief that you work for?
Absolutely. Every one of them I've learned, they poured into me, and some of my friends actually described me as a hybrid, meaning I've taken the best from each one.
Yeah. And you were kind of tested with that right out of the gate. I mean, the news of the week we should talk about is a young mother living in a van with 2 children, nowhere to go, and 2 of them, unfortunately, pass away. And we learned this week she reached out to the city for help, and there was a dropping of the ball there. And you're in kind of the unique position, having been with the city as well in some capacity. Yes. What can we learn from this?
Well, the mayor, is promptly, of course, launched an investigation into it. So he's really going to dissect what happened on the city side of it when it comes to our housing revitalization department. And, we can always do better. And so I'm not really into the pointing the finger, but dissecting the process and figuring out how we can continuously improve it and offer the services. And really what's important is to get the message out to our community that we all have a hand in it, that when you look, or you may be at Walmart or somewhere, many of the unsheltered, you think that they're on the street living in a sleeping bag, but a lot of folks are living in their cars.
Yeah.
And so making sure that they know where the resources are and that we're connecting them and that they receive the adequate resources, the guidance, and how they can get into drop-in centers. Because the reality was, they didn't have to perish because we had beds, we had spaces available at our drop-in centers. But if you don't know that they're there and you don't get connected, then it's almost like it's not there.
Yeah. And we've already seen some action on this, and work is happening from the city side to help them find shelter, permanent shelter.
I just wanted to add too that all of our precinct stations, they're opened, and you know, if an individual is experiencing a situation where they're exposed to the elements and they need to warm up, they can come to any police precinct and we will receive them. And not only that, we're going to call our unsheltered population hotline and connect them to outreach workers. The outreach workers will respond to the precincts and also work on getting them transportation to a drop-in center.
Yeah. When you were the community liaison officer, you said you were committed to bridging the gap between community and law enforcement.
Yes.
As chief, how are you going to do that better?
Oh, continuous improvement, reaching out, not having an ego, not pointing fingers, and picking up the telephone and say, hey, as interim chief, that was one of the things I did right out the gate, New Year's. We know that the Lions, we were all celebrating America's favorite team. I was planning the Super Bowl and everything, right?
Oh, that's the reason why.
Yeah.
We were planning the Super Bowl
I was
party.
already planning the parade. But one of the things is with the terrorist incident that happened in Las Vegas, with what happened in New Orleans, and then with everybody looking at our post game, I reached out to Michael Bouchard, the sheriff. I reached out to Anthony Wickham and asked for additional resources from our suburban partners, and they sent it.
Yeah. And Kansas City had an incident like that, too, at a Super Bowl parade. And I'm glad you brought that up. When I covered the George Floyd protests, I remember you were the one who knelt with protesters on one of those nights. And it became an emotional kind of turning point with that. Those were the same protesters, though, that all were arrested at one point when they were protesting. What did you learn during those 2 weeks, and how did that kind of shape how your outreach program works with the community?
Well, one of the things is Reverend Wendell Anthony always says this. He says, make friends before you need them. And so we at the Detroit Police Department have excellent community relations. I made a whole lot of friends with activists. You know, you talk about grassroots. I'm tight with the grassroots community. Also, it's another part of the community, they say, that goes even deeper than grassroots, which is mud roots. And so I'm friends before we need them. What happened was when we had outsiders from various parts, some of the, Antifa and some of the other more extreme organizations, when they came to Detroit, they thought they were going to find a population of citizens that hated the Detroit Police Department. They didn't, because we already had these great relationships. That's the real reason that the city of Detroit didn't burn. And it was Detroiters that stood up and said, not our city. And so I'm going to continue that. And folks ask me, Chief Bettison, what's your priorities as chief of police? My priorities are the priorities of the citizens of Detroit, and also listening to stakeholders. They tell me what the priorities are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would expect making friends before you need them applies when you end up with a new boss, because you're going to have one in about a year. Somebody else is going to be mayor. Yeah. How are you approaching that?
My thing is just service. And so I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about delivering the best public safety that I can possibly deliver. And so, so be it. I don't worry about the future when it comes to politics. I worry about the right now.
You don't feel any pressure to do anything in this first year before that change happens, too?
No. As long as I'm keeping the city safe, and as long as I'm doing what I need to do in my role as chief of police, everything else will take care of itself.
We've seen a shift in big events. So like it used to be tree lighting, fireworks, we would expect something to happen, not in a good way at those things. And that has turned a corner. We haven't seen these things. The NFL draft going off without a hitch. Do you expect that? How do you make sure that continues?
Oh, my God. So I've been interviewing for chief of police ever since Mayor Duggan announced me as the interim, and so the big test was tree lighting. If something bad would have happened at tree lighting, y'all would have threw me out of here. I'm serious. And so I immediately got on the phone. I called Ray Washington, Wayne County Sheriff. I called Colonel Grady of MSP. I called everybody. I said, hey, send me additional resources because I still have to protect the neighborhoods. I can't take every police officer that's a Detroit officer and put them downtown.
Right.
And so I'm reaching out to my law enforcement partners. I reach out to the feds too, the FBI. I have stuff that you can't even see when we're protecting downtown Detroit. So I'll call everybody, and guess what? When you ask, they haven't said no yet.
That's good. That's good. Making friends before you need them. Let me touch on recruitment before I let you go. It's always been a tough area for DPD. How do you go about keep cultivating that talent and reaching the kids that are in Detroit that want to be cops and making sure they want to be a cop in Detroit?
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm able to brag that we're at a 99% fill rate. So I'm not having a problem with recruiting, and our department is very, very diverse. And folks will say, well, the population of Detroit is roughly 85% African American. My department stands at 55% African American officers. And so we definitely want our department to reflect the community, but we're doing way better than most. And we recruit with billboards, public safety announcements. I have my recruiting section actually going to the churches in the schools. And so we're embedded in ensuring that we definitely recruit people
and
from the city.
Them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I got a stack of applications from officers who left the city of Detroit who want to come back to be Detroit police officers. Thank God for City Council who gave us the raises. We give our officers a $10,000 raise. Mayor Duggan, everybody who participated in that. I'm working very closely with the DPOA, which is the Detroit Police Officers Association of Unions, the LSA, so I have their full endorsement to be chief of police. And things are going well. It's a good time to be the chief of police in the city of Detroit.
Well, congratulations, and we certainly wish you the best and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Jason.
Appreciate it, Chief. We're coming right back. We're going to talk education on Flashpoint. Stay there. Back here on Flashpoint with the education struggles Michigan now faces. Earlier in the show, we put up those statistics regarding reading and math, the nation's report card. I want to talk about it with Detroit News education reporter Jennifer Chambers. Hannah Dellinger's with Chalkbeat, a reporter there, a nonprofit news organization that covers education. Molly Masek is with the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and Lakia Wilson-Lumpkins is the president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers. All first-timers here on Flashpoint, so thank you. We're going to get through this together.
Thanks.
Let me start with those numbers. And the NAEP put these out. Hannah, how concerned should parents be when they see these? We were talking a moment ago. The one that jumped out to me is the basic reading skills of fourth graders seems very concerning.
Yes, so 2 years ago, Michigan students performed the worst that they had fourth grade reading in 30 years on the nation's report card. And in 2024, they didn't improve at all.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing on the NAEP is also, like, this is just one way to measure student success, but we're seeing the same kinds of results from other student assessments, such as the MSTEP and benchmark assessments, which are given to students at the beginning and the end of each school year. And that's showing us that students who entered school in kindergarten or first grade during the early days of the pandemic are really struggling to catch up in reading to where they should be. And also on the NAEP, Michigan's fourth and eighth graders didn't show much improvement at all or any improvement in math.
Jennifer, you had a great article this week that talked about there's a bright spot in math to be seen here.
Yeah, that's based on the research by a Stanford and Harvard researchers who took scores nationally, and they produced a common data set that said that Michigan students actually did really well in math, and they placed 17th in the nation. And I talked to a couple academic professors that said that, you know, when districts provide more teachers, when they provide more tutoring, when they focus in on the classroom and those relationships, kids are thriving in math. But the question is, why isn't this happening in reading? And there's a lot of other reasons behind that as well.
We touched on COVID a little bit there. Molly, when you see these numbers, is that only to blame? Because it was kind of a downhill slide going into COVID.
I wouldn't say it's only to blame, but it did play a large part in what we're seeing, and it's really concerning that those numbers continue to decline and are worse than they were prior to the pandemic. But this is an ongoing trend that goes back many years before the pandemic and seems to have been greatly exacerbated by the lockdowns and the online learning that most students experienced during that time.
Lakia, when you see a trend like this that seems to not be turning around, even though the state keeps spending more money, at least per pupil wise, how do you turn it around? Where do you start?
I think that districts are now being creative and offering diverse programming and courses such as ELA, English Language Arts, and mathematics, offering after-school tutoring, offering Saturday school, and it takes all of those interventions in place. Detroit Public Schools Community District has a position now called an academic interventionist that is assisting our students that are lower-level readers with English and language arts, most definitely.
And something to combat absenteeism, which is the incentives for kids to show up.
Yes, yes. You know, we have to do some radical things, and we know that many parents have taken that very same route in terms of offering students different dollar amounts for grades on their report cards, and so the district is doing something very similar to that.
Yeah, and we know a lot of people would say that's thinking far out of the box, but how big of chronic absenteeism, how big of a role does that play, do you think, Hannah?
So experts say that chronic absenteeism, both nationally in Michigan and in the Detroit Public School District, really is impacting student achievement. Basically, if kids don't go to school, they're not going to be there to learn. And in Michigan, in the last school year, 1 in 3 students were considered chronically absent, which means that they're missing 10% or more of school days in a year. And that's a slight improvement from the year before, but it's still about 10 percentage points higher than it was before COVID. And in DPSCD in the last school year, that was nearly 66% of kids were chronically absent.
Yeah.
I was going to weigh in that one way to look at the chronic absenteeism problem from a teacher's perspective and a learning is imagine you've got 25 kids and one kid is out for 3 days. He comes back and they're learning math, and then another child decides to take off the next 3 days. So now and this keeps happening again and again. So a teacher now has a set of children who are all at different places and learning this math lesson, and she can focus on the kids that are there, but then she's got the kids that are behind 5 days, 2 days, and have missed integral parts of lessons. So teachers face a real challenge when kids skip even 1 day a month. 2 days a month, and a lot of these chronic absenteeism issues are due to transportation. Yes. They're due to children literally taking care of other children at home, their own sick parents. I did a series looking at chronic absenteeism where I went out with an organization that knocked door to door to see if children were home, and we found a nice young man at home, knocked on the door, and his mother called him from the bedroom, and I said, "Why didn't you go to school today?" And he honestly said to me, "Just didn't feel like it." And his mother didn't make him go. But I sat and spent time with the family, and she had a chronic illness, and often she wasn't able to wake him. And so there's real stories behind the chronic absenteeism problem. There's real families. It's not an issue of just tell your kids go to school, get out the door. There are families that are struggling with needs, transportation, health issues, and so I visited Detroit Public Schools, and they have a wonderful wraparound program where they also knock on doors, but they have regular meetings with kids. People go down hallways and look for kids in class to see if they're there, and if they're not, they call them.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, but it's important for kids to be in school.
Molly and Lakia, I saw you both nodding your head there, and I was going to ask about parents. I mean, at some point, parents have to play a huge role in turning this around.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to think about how we can empower parents with access to other options as well. Now, while public school might be a great option for many of these kids, some of them may not be getting to school because of the circumstances. Maybe they're not getting the best one-on-one attention that they need. There could be bullying, there could be mental health issues. So whether that student might find another school to be a better fit for them, maybe a homeschool situation, maybe an online virtual environment might be better. So what can we do to increase increase access for families, even through transportation, making sure that they are able to get to the school of their choice, but also having school choice programs in place that allow them greater flexibility.
As Jennifer stated, there are very real stories behind our young people and why they do not come to school. And so what we have done is definitely increased our attendance agents in every school, because they are able to reach out to those families, make those connections, and find out what the need is. A lot of times it is transportation, and students are looking for bus cards, or the district also has vans as well that will come and pick our students up. So there are very real stories, very real circumstances that we need to find out, build those relationships so that parents know that they can make those asks of us, and we can assist in any way possible.
The curve, go ahead, Hannah.
I did just want to add that the issues that lead to chronic absenteeism go beyond sometimes what schools can even address, and they're due to systemic issues like poverty and racism, pollution even. Kids who have asthma have a difficult time getting to school, who have different health issues because they live in polluted areas. There's so many different reasons that make it more difficult for kids in places like Detroit to get to school. Yep. And schools are being saddled with more and more things that they need to do to help kids achieve and get to school.
Well, is the solution throwing more money? We saw the per pupil amount of money approach $10,000 in the latest budget. Is that going to fix it, do you think, Lakia?
Absolutely, and $10,000 is a great start, but we definitely can improve. We know that we have students with many special needs, and they have 4 or 5 or maybe 6 different providers, not just a teacher. They may have a speech and language pathologist, they may have a social worker. So that $10,000 does not stretch enough to cover all of the different services that one student could need. So we need a weighted formula for our students that have special needs.
Molly, I'll give you the last word here. And I have to, at some point, ask, I feel like that curve mirrors almost the rise of cell phones with kids in schools. Do you think that factors in here anywhere?
Possibly, it's hard to say, but I would say, yeah, I mean, Michigan is spending so much, it continues to rise on education, and I agree that having that money go towards a foundation allowance is a really important use of those funds. So I commend that change to the budget for next year, but we really need to get more creative with our solutions, what we're doing in our schools, and how we're making sure that kids have access to the best options possible.
Yeah, I think we would all agree it's all hands on deck to turn those around. Ladies, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll wrap this edition of Flashpoint right after this. All right, 4 things before we go this morning. With a couple of rounds of snow this week coating the metro, 4 things to do to enjoy that snow and have some fun. How about going skiing and snowboarding? We have Mount Brighton, we have Pine Knob in the metro, so you don't have to go all the way up north to hit the slopes. And you know what else? How about taking the kids sledding? I'm sure you have a favorite sledding hill where you are, but maybe you want to get moving on the tubes. The Bowers School Farm in Oakland County does it in any weather, and it even lights up the hill. Check that out. When it gets dark, you can't go wrong with that, right? Well, you also can't go wrong with some ice skating. How about this? There are a lot of rinks to choose from, but our favorite here at Local 4, obviously Rhonda's favorite, is Campus Martius, where you can enjoy the downtown festivities. And when you're done, you get some hot chocolate or a bite to eat, and maybe even wander over to the riverfront, which is where the Winter Around the World Festival is. It's on the riverfront, finishing up today, features International Food Truck Rally, and they're celebrating the new year, the Lunar New Year. So much to do. That one's at Valade Park. That's our show this week. We'd love to hear your thoughts on anything we covered today. Send us an email at flashpoint@clickondetroit.com. I'm Jason Colthorpe. See you later.